Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to read you the story of Emily, which is titled like this: I got home early from work to see my master bedroom being repainted. We're renovating it before moving in, said my brother's wife. He nodded, and my parents laughed. The next day, Mom called. Why did the police come to us? Well, let's go. I'm Emily, I'm 33, and I work as an interior designer at this pretty big design company. The pay is good, and I actually love what I do. But this story isn't really about my job, it's about the biggest decision I made in my adult life, and how it basically blew up my entire family. About 6 months ago, I decided to buy a house. Not just any house though, I found this place that was basically falling apart. The listing photos were terrible. The paint was peeling everywhere, the yard looked like a jungle, and honestly, the whole thing screamed money pit. But you know what? It had potential. And more importantly, it had a backyard. I'd been living in apartments my whole adult life, and I was sick of it. I wanted my own space, my own place to do whatever I wanted with. The price was crazy low because of the condition, so I could actually afford the mortgage. My parents thought I'd lost my mind. Emily, what are you thinking? My mom said when I told them at Sunday dinner. You could get a nice apartment with everything already done. Why would you want to take on all that work? My dad just shook his head. That house is going to eat up all your money and time. Even my younger brother Jake chimed in, seriously, just get a condo or something. This sounds like a nightmare. His wife Sarah was there too, as usual. She didn't say much, but I could see her rolling her eyes whenever I talked about my plans. Sarah's always been kind of judgmental about everything I do. She's one of those people who acts like she knows better about everything, even though she's never had a real job and spends most of her time trying to be an influencer or something. But I didn't care what any of them thought. I wanted this house. I could see past all the problems to what it could become. And honestly, I was excited about the renovation. I work with construction crews all the time for my job, so I knew I could get help when I needed it. So I bought the house. Got the mortgage approved, signed all the papers, and suddenly I was a homeowner. The day I got the keys, I stood in that disaster of a living room and felt this huge rush of excitement. This was mine. The renovation took 6 long, exhausting, expensive months. Some stuff I did myself: painting, basic decorating, landscaping. The bigger jobs I hired out, but here's the thing, the guys who work with my company gave me a huge break on labor costs. They charged me basically half their normal rate because we worked together all the time. It saved me thousands. I practically lived at Home Depot. My weekends were spent tearing out old carpet, picking out paint colors, and learning way more about plumbing than I ever wanted to know. There were definitely moments when I questioned my sanity. Like when I found out the electrical system needed to be completely redone, or when it rained for 3 days straight and I discovered the roof had a leak. But slowly, it started coming together. The walls got fresh paint. The floors got refinished. I put in new fixtures, updated the kitchen, and turned that jungle of a backyard into something actually nice. Every week it looked a little better, and I got more and more proud of what I was doing. That's when I decided to have a housewarming party. I went to my parents' house for dinner to invite everyone. Jake and Sarah were there, as usual. They rent this tiny apartment and are always at my parents' place for weekend dinners. I'm having a housewarming party next Saturday, I announced after we'd finished eating. I'd love for you all to come see the house now that it's done. That's when Sarah laughed. Not a nice laugh either, it was mean and nasty. I don't want to go to that pigsty, she said, still laughing like she'd made the funniest joke ever. I was completely shocked. I mean, who says something like that? Actually, I did major renovations there, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But if you don't want to come, you don't have to. Sarah's face went red and she shut her mouth. She didn't say another word to me for the rest of the evening, just sat there pouting like a little kid. My parents and Jake looked uncomfortable, but they promised they'd come. Though honestly, they didn't sound too excited about it. The party started at 6 on Saturday. My coworkers, friends, and neighbors showed up right on time. Everyone was walking around saying how amazing the house looked, asking about different design choices, complimenting the work I'd done. The party was going great. Except my family wasn't there. An hour went by, then an hour and a half. I was starting to think they'd blown me off completely when I finally heard cars pulling up outside. My parents, Jake and Sarah, walked up to the front door, and I could tell from their faces they were expecting the worst. Like they thought they were about to walk into some kind of disaster zone. But the second they stepped inside, their expressions completely changed. "Oh my goodness, Emily," my mom said, looking around with wide eyes. "This is gorgeous, you have such wonderful taste." I felt so vindicated in that moment. Finally, they could see what I'd been working toward. But then I noticed Sarah. She was walking around, but instead of admiring anything, she was clearly looking for problems. She'd peer at corners, run her finger along surfaces, squint at the paint job. It was pathetic, really. She was trying so hard to find something wrong, but there wasn't anything to criticize. Then she disappeared upstairs for a while. When she came back down, she announced loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "The color in your master bedroom is terrible. I would definitely repaint that." I smiled at her. "Well, when you have your own house, you can paint the walls any color you want, even pink." Everyone knew Sarah was obsessed with pink everything. That did it, her face went bright red and she looked like she was about to explode. "Come on, Jake, we're leaving," she snapped and marched toward the door. Jake gave me this apologetic look but followed her anyway. My parents looked embarrassed and disappointed, but they left too, shaking their heads. The party kept going without them, and honestly, it was better that way. After the whole housewarming disaster, I figured my family would need some time to cool off. But Mom surprised me. About a week later, she called and asked if she could come over and see the house again. Just the two of us this time. "I feel terrible about how Saturday ended," she said. "I'd really like to spend some time looking at everything you've done without all the drama." So she came over that weekend, and it was actually really nice. She walked around taking her time, asking questions about my design choices, complimenting different rooms. We had coffee in my new kitchen and she told me how proud she was of what I'd accomplished. "I have to admit, Emily, your father and I were wrong to discourage you from buying this place," she said. "You really knew what you were doing." It felt good to hear that from her. We had a nice afternoon together, and when she was leaving, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while. "Here," I said, handing her a spare key. "In case I ever go out of town or something. Maybe you could water my plants or just check on things." She hugged me and took the key. It felt like maybe we were getting back to normal, despite all the weirdness with Sarah and Jake. My mom came by a few more times over the next couple months. Sometimes she'd bring groceries and we'd cook dinner together. Sometimes she'd just stop by to see how I was doing. It was nice having that relationship with her again. Jake and Sarah, on the other hand, were a different story. I barely heard from them. Jake would send the occasional text about random stuff, but he never mentioned the house or the party. Sarah didn't contact me at all, which was fine by me. My dad was somewhere in between. Not actively ignoring me, but not going out of his way to spend time together either. 4 months passed like this. I was settled into my routine, loving my house, enjoying having my space. Work was going well, I was dating someone casually, and life felt pretty good. Then my mom called one Thursday evening. Her voice sounded different, kind of gentle and careful, like she was choosing her words really carefully. "Emily, honey, would you like to come for dinner this Saturday? It's been a while since we've all been together as a family." Something about her tone made me suspicious, but I said yes. I missed our family dinners, and I thought maybe enough time had passed for everyone to act normal again. Saturday came, and I drove over to my parents' house. Jake and Sarah were already there when I arrived, which wasn't surprising. They practically lived there on weekends. "Hey, Jake said when I walked in." He was being extra friendly, which immediately put me on guard. Sarah barely looked at me, but at least she wasn't actively glaring. We sat down for dinner. My mom had made pot roast, which was always good. The conversation was kind of forced at first, everyone being overly polite and asking safe questions about work and the weather. But then, right in the middle of me telling a story about a difficult client, my mom suddenly put down her fork and gave me this sweet smile. "Emily, I wanted to talk to you about something," she said in that same gentle voice from the phone call. Everyone else stopped eating and looked at me. Jake was smiling too, that same puppy dog smile he used to give me when we were kids and he wanted something. "Jake and Sarah's lease is ending soon," my mom continued. "And with everything that's been going on with the economy and Jake's work situation, they're having a hard time finding something they can afford." I felt my stomach drop. I knew exactly where this was going. "So we were thinking," my mom went on, "maybe they could stay with you for a little while. Just temporarily, until they get back on their feet." The silence in the room was deafening. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my answer. Jake was still doing that pathetic hopeful smile thing. I took a deep breath. "I don't want anyone else living in my house." My mom's face fell. "Emily, this isn't just anyone. This is your brother and his wife." "I understand that," I said, trying to stay calm, "but my answer is still no." That's when Sarah decided to jump in. "I always knew you were greedy and arrogant," she said, her voice dripping with venom. I looked right at her. "Funny, because I remember you saying at my housewarming that you didn't want to come to my pigsty. Now you're ready to live in it?" Sarah shrugged like it was no big deal. "I mean, if it's free, I guess I could deal with it." The audacity of this woman was unbelievable. Then Jake started in with his sob story. "Come on, Em, you have to understand my situation. They're doing layoffs at my job, and they cut my salary by 20%. We're really struggling here." I looked at him, then at Sarah. Maybe Sarah should get a job then, instead of pretending to be a blogger and doing whatever it is she does all day. Sarah's face went bright red. "How dare you?" "I'm just saying," I continued, "if money's tight, maybe both adults in the relationship should be working." That's when Sarah completely lost it. She started crying, big, dramatic tears, and ran out of the dining room. I could hear her stomping up the stairs to my old bedroom. "Now look what you've done," Jake said, jumping up from his chair. "You're such a fool, Emily." And he ran after his wife. My parents just sat there, both of them giving me these disappointed looks like I was the worst daughter in the world. I finished my dinner as quickly as possible and got out of there. After that disaster of a family dinner, things went completely silent. And I mean completely. Nobody called, nobody texted, nobody invited me to anything. It was like I'd been erased from the family. A whole month went by without a single word from any of them. No Saturday dinner invitations from my mom, no random texts from Jake, nothing. Honestly, I was kind of relieved. I didn't want to deal with any more guilt trips about letting Jake and Sarah move into my house. I had my own life to live, and I was enjoying the peace and quiet. My house felt more like home than ever. I had friends over for dinner, I worked on little projects around the place, and I didn't have to worry about anyone showing up and making comments about my choices. But then one Tuesday, everything changed. I had a meeting scheduled with this potential new client at 2 in the afternoon. Big renovation project, really good money. But around 11:30, she called and said she had to reschedule because of some family emergency. No problem, I thought. I could use the time to catch up on some paperwork. But then I realized I'd left some important files at home, so I decided to just head back to the house and work from there for the rest of the day. I got home around noon, which was about 3 hours earlier than I normally would on a Tuesday. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed 2 cars parked on the street in front of my house. One was my parents' car. The other was Jake's. My first thought was that maybe something was wrong. Like maybe there had been an emergency and they were trying to reach me. But then I realized they could have just called if that was the case. I used my key to unlock the front door, and the second I stepped inside, I knew something was very wrong. There was stuff everywhere. My stuff. Furniture from my master bedroom was sitting in the living room and hallway. My dresser, my nightstand, even my bedside lamps. I could hear voices coming from upstairs. Loud voices, like people were working. My heart was pounding as I climbed the stairs. The voices were coming from my bedroom, my master bedroom. I walked down the hall and stopped in the doorway. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My parents were there, Jake was there. Sarah was there, standing in the middle of the room with this huge smile on her face. And there were two guys I didn't recognize, workers with paint rollers and brushes. They were painting my walls. My beautiful, carefully chosen walls that I'd spent weeks picking the perfect color for. They were painting them pink. Bright, obnoxious, Pepto-Bismol pink. I completely lost it. "What the hell is going on here?" I screamed. Everyone jumped and turned to look at me. The workers stopped mid-roll and stared. My parents looked guilty as hell. Jake looked like a deer in headlights. But Sarah just kept smiling. "Oh good, you're home," she said, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "We decided to renovate the master bedroom before Jake and I move in. Don't you love the color?" I was so angry I could barely speak. "Stop," I said to the workers, "stop painting my walls right now." The workers looked confused and glanced at each other, but they put down their brushes. I turned to my mother. "What the hell do you think you're doing? How did you even get in here?" My mom had the nerve to smile at me. "I used my key, honey. We're all family here, and we knew you'd want Jake and Sarah to be comfortable when they move in." "Move in?" I said. "I told you no, I very clearly told you no." "We knew you'd come around," my dad said. "You always do the right thing eventually." The right thing? The right thing was letting these people break into my house and destroy my bedroom? "Get out," I said, "all of you. Get out of my house right now, or I'm calling the police." My parents started giving me these lectures about family loyalty and how I was being selfish. Jake was yelling about how I didn't understand his situation and how I should help him out. Sarah was calling me selfish and ungrateful. The workers, smart guys that they were, packed up their stuff super fast and got out of there. They could see this was about to get a lot worse. "I'm serious," I said when the workers were gone. "Get out now, or I will physically escort you out myself." They all looked at me like I was crazy, but something in my voice must have convinced them I meant business. One by one, they filed out of my bedroom, down the stairs, and out the front door. I stood there in the middle of my bedroom, looking at the walls. Half of them were still the nice gray color I'd chosen. The other half were this horrible pink that made me want to throw up. I was shaking with anger, but I knew I had to act fast. These people had proven they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted, and I couldn't let this happen again. First, I called one of my workers, Mike, who's done a bunch of jobs for me and lives pretty close by. "Mike, I need you to come change my locks right now," I said, "it's an emergency." While I waited for Mike, I drove to the hardware store and bought paint. The exact same color I'd originally chosen for my bedroom. I was going to fix this mess tonight, even if it took me until dawn. Mike showed up and changed all my locks, front door, back door, even the garage. After he left, I spent the rest of the evening and most of the night repainting those walls. I was exhausted and furious, but I was determined to erase every trace of what they'd done. When I finally finished around 2 in the morning, my bedroom looked normal again. But I was too wired to sleep in there, so I crashed in the guest room. The next morning, I called a couple more of my guys to help move the heavy furniture back where it belonged. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I called a security company. "I want cameras around the entire perimeter of my house," I told them. "And a full alarm system. Motion sensors, door sensors, everything." They came out that same day and installed everything. Cameras covering every angle of my property, motion detectors, door and window sensors, the works. The system connected to an app on my phone so I could monitor everything remotely. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. My house was secure, my locks were changed, And if anyone tried to pull this kind of stunt again, I'd have video evidence. The security system turned out to be the best investment I ever made. And I found that out way sooner than I expected. It was only a couple days after the installation when I was sitting at my desk at work, going over some design plans, when my phone started buzzing. The security app was sending me alerts. Motion detected, front entrance, attempted entry, front door, alarm system activated. My heart started racing. I opened the app and pulled up the live camera feed. There was Jake, standing right in front of my door. He had something in his hand. It looked like the old spare key I'd given my mom. I watched him try to put the key in the lock. When it didn't work, he jiggled it around for a while, getting more and more frustrated. Then he stepped back and looked around, probably checking to see if any neighbors were watching. That's when he went to his car and came back with a crowbar. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My own brother was trying to break into my house with a crowbar. He jammed it into the door frame and started prying, trying to force the door open. The alarm was going off. I could see the lights flashing on the camera. Jake must have heard it too because he suddenly stopped what he was doing, looked around in panic, threw the crowbar down, and ran back to his car. He peeled out of there like his life depended on it. I sat at my desk staring at my phone, completely shocked. I mean, I knew things were bad between us, but I never thought Jake would actually try to break into my house. This was criminal behavior. I saved the video footage and drove straight to the police station. I want to file a report for attempted breaking and entering, I told the officer at the front desk. They took me seriously when I showed them the video. You could see Jake's face clearly, you could see him trying the key, you could see him with the crowbar. There was no denying what he'd done. I filed the report and gave them all the footage. They said they'd be in touch about next steps. I went home that evening feeling like I'd done the right thing, but also kind of sad. It was my brother, you know? But he'd crossed a line that you just don't cross. Saturday evening, my phone rang. It was my mom, and she was screaming before I even had a chance to say hello. "Emily, what have you done?" "The police came to our house and arrested Jake. They said you filed a report claiming he tried to break into your house." "He did try to break into my house," I said calmly. "I have video proof." "You need to go down there right now and drop those charges," she yelled. "This is your brother we're talking about. Maybe my brother shouldn't have tried to break into my house with a crowbar." My mom was crying now, going on about how I was destroying the family and how could I do this to my own brother. "I'll drop the charges," I said, "but only if you all promise to leave me alone. No more showing up at my house, no more trying to get me to let them move in, no more drama. You leave me completely alone." She agreed immediately. Yes, whatever you want. Just please drop the charges." After I hung up, my phone started ringing nonstop. My dad, Jake, Sarah, they were all calling and texting, begging me to drop the charges, promising they'd never bother me again if I just went to the police and withdrew the complaint. The texts were pretty desperate. "Please Emily, we promise to leave you alone, just drop the charges. I'm sorry, I messed up, I'll never do it again, just help me out this one time. We swear on our lives we won't contact you anymore, just please fix this." I let them sweat it out for the night, but the next morning I went back to the police station and withdrew the complaint. Jake got released that same day. Turns out he hadn't been in any real trouble, no previous record, so they just questioned him and let him go with a warning. But it was enough to scare the hell out of him. And you know what? It worked. After that, nobody from my family contacted me. Not one phone call, not one text, nothing. It was like they'd finally gotten the message that I was serious about wanting to be left alone. 6 months passed in complete peace. No drama, no guilt trips, no surprise visits. I could come home from work and know that my house would be exactly how I left it. I could go out of town for a weekend without worrying about coming back to find my bedroom painted pink again. I was actually starting to forget about all the family drama when I ran into my cousin Lisa at the grocery store. We'd always gotten along pretty well, but I hadn't talked to her since before all this mess started. Emily, oh my God, how are you? She said, giving me a hug. I've been wondering how you've been doing. We chatted for a few minutes about work and life, and then she brought up the family. So I heard Jake and Sarah are living with your parents now, she said. Your mom mentioned Sarah's pregnant. That must be exciting. Pregnant. Well, that explained a lot. Yeah, your mom said they're really struggling financially. Jake's job situation hasn't gotten any better, and now with a baby coming. Lisa shook her head. I feel bad for them, but I guess your parents are happy to help out. I just nodded and made some non-committal comments. I wasn't about to get into the whole story with Lisa in the middle of the cereal aisle. But driving home, I thought about what she'd told me. Jake and Sarah were living with my parents. Sarah was pregnant. Jake was still struggling with work and money. And my parents were dealing with all of it. Did I feel guilty? Maybe a little. But mostly I felt relieved that it wasn't my problem to solve. I'd made the right choice buying my house. I'd made the right choice fixing it up the way I wanted it. I'd made the right choice not letting them move in with me. And I definitely made the right choice installing that security system and filing that police report when Jake crossed the line. My house is still beautiful. I still love coming home to it every day. I still feel proud when I look around at what I accomplished. And I don't have to share it with anyone I don't want to share it with. Some people might think that makes me selfish or mean. But you know what? I don't care. I worked hard for what I have, and I have every right to protect it. My family made their choices, and I made mine. I'm not responsible for fixing their problems or letting them take advantage of me just because we share DNA. I defended myself and my property from people who thought they could walk all over me, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Sometimes you have to choose yourself, even when it's hard. Even when other people call you selfish. Even when it means losing relationships you thought mattered.